Hello, welcome to the July 19th, 2024 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you've not attended a livestream before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat field or submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that I may not be able to keep up with all questions in a real-time manner. And if you don't see an immediate response to your question, we will go through them chronologically, but if we don't see an immediate response, if we could avoid asking the same questions repeatedly, that would be appreciated. Several hours after the live stream ends, we should have an index of all of the topics with timestamps so that you could navigate quickly to a particular topic and jump right to that portion of the live stream. If you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, I think we've topped 34,000 topics at this point. You could go to cubaseindex.com, and that's a website done by Jan from Stockholm. So we want to give a special thanks to Jan for creating that website. So that will allow you to kind of type in a search question and navigate to over 1,400 hours of live streams. Also, we have two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude. They are not official Steinberg employees. They just kind of do this to make it a better community experience for everyone. So we'll give special thanks to them. And also we'll give us kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching this live or watching it afterwards, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. One quick programming note, as I mentioned on earlier live streams this month, there will not be any live streams next week. I'll be on vacation. So just a quick heads up, and we'll wrap up following up back on July 30th and be back to our normal schedule at that point. So with that, we will go ahead and begin our session. So let's go ahead and start. All right, so we see Stefan checking in from Sweden. We have Dwight Cunningham checking in from the Bahamas. Thanks for joining us, both of you. Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. We have Peter Patah from Montreal. Uno Memento from rainy and warm Finland. Great to see you. All right, so Dwight Cunningham's question is, Greg, is there a way to gain stage in Groove Agent? My channel is peaking. Okay, so let's take a look. We'll come over. Let's say if we're playing in Groove Agent here, so if we're playing this, you'll see a little volume slider at the very top here. So if we're in, so if you find yourself peaking, something like that, you could just bring down. You'll see this little triangle kind of ramp icon, and you could just simply adjust the gain right there. There's also the mixer where we could do it for individual channels. So if I want my snare to be really loud or just to be heard in the overheads or room mics, we could adjust the different elements here with our mixer. And if we were doing like a beat agent kit, I think it's going to be very similar. So let's say if we are playing back a beat agent kit, we still have kind of our global. So if you're distorting, you could then just simply bring that down right there. And there's also a mixer directly within. So if you wanted to, if you have different elements that are bust, I think we have some reverb in there as well. So now we can. So now we could take our different buses that we've created and adjust the volume. But if you're kind of peaking overall, I would just come right up to the very top here, and then you'll see the volume adjustment globally for Groove Agent. All right, wonderful to see Kerwin Young on from Atlanta. Kerwin will be one of our celebrity attendees today. All right, we see Tim K joining us from Zeist in the Netherlands. We see Millard Brown he says he's very relieved that the little computer outage, the little cyber outage that's going on is not squashed to the live stream. So I just hope it doesn't affect my flight tomorrow. So, but glad I'm not flying today. I've seen friends stranded all over the world. So hopefully it'll be okay for my flight tomorrow. All right, we see John Costigan, and I'm also glad that it didn't affect the live stream. Did you see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin? We have Soren checking in from Sweden. Pete Franco from Fort Worth. All right, we have Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. All right, and we have Fly V checking in from Winnipeg. All right, and we have Home Studio World checking in Dr. Ayman from Jordan. All right, and we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Always great to have you on, Michael. All right, so we have a question: how to bring clarity in a vocal? Okay, so let's go ahead and take a quick look. So, having a great singer is always a great place to start, but we'll just kind of start this. So a lot of times, just a little bit, depending on the recording itself, and every recording may present kind of unique aspects to it. So let's say I want to take a recording, I'll bypass kind of all of my processing on this particular vocal, and we'll start from scratch. So I'm going to turn off my EQ, and I'm going to do it all utilizing one plugin called the vocal chain. So let's go ahead and listen to our vocal in context. So not necessarily like popping out of the mix unprocessed. All right, so we could choose to make this track. If I want to do processing, I'm going to do processing in stereo. So I'm going to change this from a mono to a stereo track, and it was a feature that was added in Cubase 13. So when we click here, we're going to convert it to stereo. And what we're going to do now, I'm just going to open up one particular plugin called Vocal Chain. And this is a wonderful solution for coming up with vocals and fixing vocals, because it actually within one plugin gives us 16 different processes. So let's say we wanted to come over here, and as we're doing this, I'm going to do just a cut filter so that we'll turn this on so we can get rid of get rid of maybe some plosives at the bottom and some. And let's say if we need to adjust their gate, so maybe I want the release to be, we can set our threshold. I'm on the outside looking in. You put the close side up. We could do a little bit of pitch correction if needed. If we need to do de-essing, where do I go from here? Where do I go from here? We could also have compression, and we could choose kind of different compressions. So now we could kind of come right over here. Thought I would be. Now let's do a little bit of EQ. The very last one to leave. I plan on loving you forever. Didn't you see? And let's add a little bit of reverb to this.
looked at you, I fell right through.
So now we're just gonna come here.
I do it all for you. Now I'm uninvited.
Maybe just a little bit of delay on it. So let's make it maybe like a dotted quarter note.
You put the close sign up on your heart. All the lights went out and it got dark.
We could come over here and just kind of take the imager plugin.
Where do I go from here? Where do I go from here?
So if we were to now kind of come over here and bypass.
I'm on the outside looking in.
And we want to set in context. So it's good my compressor. Let me just adjust my output. So again, just if we bypass where we were. So you could do a lot of fantastic stuff for kind of all your vocal processing right within the vocal chain. So experiment with that plugin. Okay, so we see from Sai Raj how to export a stereo track in Dolby Atmos. So I'm not sure if you want to export like a so, you know, Dolby Atmos isn't stereo, but if you wanted to export a binaural track, what we could do is come over. Let's just open up a different project here. Okay, so let's say if we have a Atmos file and we've kind of done the setup of the Atmos file. So let's say now if you have headphones on, you may hear this pan around, kind of behind your head. So you can see this kind of panning, going behind us, to our right, behind center, rear left, kind of to the left, left front. So if we wanted to export this as an ADM file, we would go to project and go to the ADM authoring, and now we could just export as an ADM file. But a lot of people may want to listen to it in stereo. So in my VST connections, I have my renderer bus, but I also have my stereo out. I want to go, I think we'll come right over here. I think we would just put it on our renderer track. Let's go to our sends, or on the bed track right here. And then I'm going to route this out to my stereo out. So we select the bed channel that was created, and I'm going to send this to my stereo out. And now at this point, I will do an export audio mix down. And we'll call it Atmos Guitar Binaural. And we'll call it July 19th. And then that would automatically just simply allow you to just choose a different path. Then when you do the export, at that point, that would automatically just turn the cue off. So we'll say, let's export that guitar part. All right, so now I'll go to my Finder. Let's go to our desktop. All right, and let me route the audio so everyone could hear it quickly. So now I'm going to take that. This is playing back as a stereo file and binaural. So again, just make sure on your standard bed that you have it set for this to be routed to the stereo out. You said it's 0 dB, then you could kind of get an approximation of a binaural representation of your Atmos project when working on monitoring in stereo or headphones. All right. All right, we see Pertti Komenen checking in from Finland. We see Nick from Essex in the UK. See Michael Teams is granted to Gerald 11 gallons of German or Sermon chocolate cake and 1 gallon of Cherry's Jubilee to Jazz Dude. Okay, reading through comments. All right. All right, so we see a question from Rob from Tarpon Springs, Florida. Is there an easy way to move a project that was done in an earlier version of Cubase 10 or 12 into Cubase 13 so that when it's activated, it does not call up the old version? So it's really kind of what you do is more of kind of an operating system issue. So whether you're on Mac or PC, come over here. Let's just go to where I have some projects here. So at this point where we have just within your operating system, it's kind of similar, but if you just say open with, and at this point you could make, and there's different methods for Mac or PC, but here you could just right click and tell it to open this particular project in Cubase 13. So it's just a matter of associating the file extension with the particular program that you want, either in Windows or Mac. So it's not necessarily a Cubase function, but more of an operating system setting for that, Rob. All right, we see Lawrence Koch from Barn Door Recording. Thanks for joining us today. So Gerald Ely who had a birthday yesterday, is gladly taking the 11 gallons of ice cream. Happy belated birthday, Gerald. We hope you had a wonderful day of celebration. And thanks for joining us today. It's always wonderful to see you on. All right, we see Michael Pierce has joined us. He's lurking for a bit. Michael Teams is on fire with ice cream distribution today. All right, so we have a question from, we see from Behind the Gig question, best way to move tracks from one project to another while keeping plugins and animation, I guess maybe automation. So if let's say I'm in this particular project and I wanted to import tracks from a different project, what we could do is simply go to your File menu. We'll see Import Tracks from Project. I'm going to select a different project here. So let's say, okay, I want to go to this project. All right, so now I'm going to select open. And then when we do this, I could say, okay, I want to incorporate the bass, the rhythm, guitar, lead guitar, and the groove agent track. I want to include the events. I want to include or exclude the automation. I want to include the channel settings, and then I would hit OK. And at that point, all of the automation that was in that particular project, the tracks, all of the settings that were going on have automatically been imported. So once again, go to File, Import Tracks from Project, select a project, and here you could choose to ignore the media if you just want the actual tracks, which tracks you want. If you wanted to specify a range and set the automation right there. So let me know if that's what you want to do. I think that will do the trick for you. And thanks for joining us on the live stream today, Behind the Gig. All right. All right, so we see question. Hello, representative of Cubase. So yeah, my name is Greg. You can just call me that if you want. It says, can you please tell me what DAW settings you use to make the render of the mix sound exactly like it sounds in the DAW? So, usually things that can cause a disparity between the render of the mix that you're hearing and what's being outputted is not being generated by the DAW, but it's often, it could be the vast majority of times it's people that are mixing an environment that they're not aware of all the acoustic elements that are going on. So if you don't have like room treatment, it could be that you have a lot of bass that's being built up and kind of propagating, and kind of the bass is louder because the bass is living in a corner, and then all of a sudden and it's getting louder because the bass is kind of trapped in a corner and it's not allowed to kind of continue to move. So a lot of room treatment could fix that. So when people don't have like a bass trap, for instance, it's often that they don't get the bass correct, the balance of the low frequencies, because their room is kind of providing information that's not really accurate. So often it's not necessarily a room a function in Cubase. What is in Cubase is going to be output exactly as it was. But if you're using speakers to monitor, then you have room treatment. If you use headphones, then you're not listening. Most people, depending on different listening environments, it may not translate to a car. It may translate to headphones well. So, there are headphone systems that have learning. I know I have some friends that have like the Slate headphones where they have DSP in the headphones to kind of compensate. So you could mix on the headphones and switch between different monitoring environments. But generally, there's nothing to do in the DAW. It's going to be kind of a result of the monitoring once it's left the DAW that causes the disparity between making the mix sound exactly like it sounds in the DAW and translating that to a deliverable file. All right, and we see just a follow-up comment. It's because Cubase usually buttons the renders, a known problem. So, Cubase isn't muddying up the rendered file. So it's, probably, check your monitoring environment. Okay, so we have a question from DB Music Productions. Question, add instrument. I have a profile, folders that contain instruments. They are all open. When I go to add an instrument, I want them to be initially closed so that I can open the folders. Okay, so let's come over. I'll just do a new project and we'll try to recreate this. Okay. So question, I add instrument. I have a profile folders that contain instruments. All right, so let me just add a couple of instruments here. And I'll put these into a folder. Okay, it says I have a profile folders that contain instruments. I'm not sure what a profile is, but we'll start with there. They are open. When I go to add an instrument, I want them to initially be closed so that I can open the folders. All right, so I think that adding an instrument, so let's say if we come over here to our media, we go to VST instruments. So, if we're here, we could say we drag this over. I think that, maybe dragging an instrument over shouldn't necessarily close a folder. So I'm not sure if that's, it says I want them to initially be closed so that I can open the folders. Okay. I have profile folders that contain instruments. They are all open. When I go to add an instrument, I want them to initially be closed so I can open the folders. So, I think that the two, that adding an instrument track shouldn't necessarily close folders, but if you wanted to make a macro to do that, I think that those are two independent things. But if you want that to work, let's come over here to key commands. Let's make a new macro. We'll call it close folders, add instrument. Okay, let me just. So I'm just going to type folder in. I think that we'll see it under. Let me just find a function here. Okay, so we'll say toggle folder open state. Let me make sure that's. Track folding, so we'll say unfold tracks. So let's just come over here quickly again. Okay, so we'll say unfold tracks, and we're going to add that command. And let's say add instrument track. Okay, and we'll add that command. So if I have this open, I'll remove this track. So now I could just automatically let me just. I want to say fold tracks instead. Just make sure it's the right one. Okay, so now we do this. So we have our folder here. Let's run the macro, and now we could choose our folder, and then as we create, so you could do something kind of along those lines and say, okay, let's just make this a Hallian 7. And then those particular tracks are closed. So if we come over here, that will close. We could add our instrument track, and those tracks would be closed. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding this from DB Music Productions, but let me know if that works for you, what you want to do. All right, so we see from Orhi Sarhao says, thank you very much, sir, for explaining very well how to bring clarity in a vocal. Yeah, play around with the vocal chain. It's really great. Okay. All right, so you see from Saj Raj, how do I send stereo master file to Spotify and Apple Dolby Atmos surround? So, when you do the ADM file, the ADM file has its own downmix presets for different channel configurations. So, a lot of people will do a completely separate stereo mix, but if you're in a Dolby Atmos, if you have a Dolby Atmos file that's playing and it's only a stereo playback system, Dolby Atmos scales to the configuration of the playback system. So you don't have to deliver a separate stereo output file from the Dolby Atmos. So I'm pretty sure that what the Apple is doing, I'm not sure with Spotify, but I've had friends that were, very upset that, their mixes, that the stereo mix that they did separately was actually was playing back from the Dolby Atmos, and that was folding down to a stereo deliverable, and that didn't give the same results as what they intended. So different streaming services will have different methodologies for doing it, but the thing with Dolby Atmos is if you have 64 speakers, 11 speakers, 5 speakers, 1 speaker, 2 speakers, that it automatically folds down within the file format so that whatever listening configuration it is available, that Dolby Atmos will play. All right, wonderful to see Jazzy Lamel on. Glad you can make it today. All right, and we just see kind of a follow-up says, continuing question, the folders are, for example, Spitfire, synths, drums, etc. I'd like those folders which contain several instruments to be closed. Browsing would be quicker. Yep, so try that macro. And again, it's just project folding, fold tracks, add track instrument. Let me know if that works for you. All right, so we have, I think it's Rasan Johnson says, I'm new. Thanks for doing this. So welcome to the live stream. We hope to see you on many more. Yeah, we just sit here and answer questions for about 4 hours on Tuesdays and Fridays. All right, so we see from DJ Stats. All right, Greg, are you aware of any issues with Sample Tank 4 Max version 2 by IK Multimedia crashing Cubase Pro 13? I've raised this with IK Multimedia, but yet to receive a fix. So, I've heard, I've had people kind of have issues with Sample Tank. I was just helping, like one of my favorite musicians in the world, and his Sample Tank just started behaving super weird and wasn't playing particular notes. So I'm not sure what's going on. I currently don't use Sample Tank 4 personally, but I've helped people and have had like bizarre results of certain notes not playing when they should be. So I think that the issue will probably be resolved by Sample Tank. So maybe consider checking out, if you try to substitute an instrument using like Hallian Sonic, which is included and could kind of give you kind of the same range of sounds, check out Hallian Sonic. There's lots of great content and instruments here, and it's very stable, and you can see if that makes a difference in your system, but you may have to wait for IK Multimedia to respond. All right, Tim Weinheimer asks, hello, Greg. Hope all is well. I was trying to load an older Apple file format in Cubase. It will no longer accept that audio file format. Which program should I use to convert the Apple format to a WAV? So, Tim, if you could let me know exactly which format it is. So I'm not sure if it is an AIFF. I'll just see if I could create one here. Here, I'll just... Okay, so let's say if we export this, so I'm going to export it as an AIF, which was kind of more of a common Apple format that's kind of really not used nearly as much as WAV. It's kind of more of a 90s thing. All right, and I'm going to choose desktop here. Okay, so let's do a new project and see if we could import that audio file, the AIF, from the desktop. And I probably had that selected. Let me just re-render it here. I'll do the export one more time. And then I could actually, I'll just put it right into create an audio track here. But the file will import. So let me know, Tim, exactly what file format it is. Wavelab could probably also do it, but if you could just let me know which particular format it is, that would be helpful. All right, so we have Stevie asks the $1 million question. Is it best to use Cubase 13 Pro with Windows 11 or Apple? It's from Steve from Belfast in Northern Ireland. So my usual answer to Mac versus PC, I run both of them. I run Mac for my work and I run PC for my personal studio. I think that both operating systems are incredible, and I think that in some ways they both suck. And then, so none of them are perfect. I think either one is perfectly fine. You can get great results. So if you want to work on a Mac and you're more inclined to doing that, perfect. Cubase will work wonderfully well and take advantage of all the latest processor changes that even Apple's programs often don't. So it's completely optimized. If you want to run it on Windows, you can, no consequences. So, Steinberg is very much a cross-platform company. I think that they both work very great and are very stable on either platform. So. All right, so we see from Sairaj, how to prepare my stereo mix for sending it to streaming platforms such as Spotify and Apple's as 5.1 surround file. So, you're not going to be able to take like a stereo mix and, there's some tools that you could do to take a stereo mix and just kind of put it in a 5.1 panner. That's not going to be kind of a proper solution. So if you are going to be, mixing specifically in surround, do the surround mix. So what I know a lot of people do, and people that, have won multiple Grammys for this type of work when they're doing surround, is they will often build up the stereo mix and have a stereo mix and then do the surround mix from there. So there's no real proper way of taking the particular stereo mix and say make it a 5.1. But you could start, so they're going to be kind of separate entities, but you have to first figure out if your streaming service is actually doing 5.1, or because 5.1 is often going to be encoded through like Dolby AC3 or DTS, and that would take the 5.1 files, and you need the encoder. Most people that are using the streaming services don't have, most of the streaming services aren't going to have the encoder. The encoder is often built into like a stereo receiver. But the Atmos mix, and and that was one of the concepts of Atmos, is that if you mixed it in a full like resolution Atmos, and let's say you did it in a 714 environment, that Atmos would scale to the different delivery formats. So if you have an ADM file that you deliver from Cubase, then that's automatically going to scale again for the delivery platform. But you can't necessarily say make a stereo file into 5.1, make a stereo into Dolby Atmos, and have it make any real sense, other than you could, make it, put it a little bit into back speakers, but you can't really take different file formats. So if you wanted to do a 5.1, but I don't think most of the streaming services actually will do a 5.1 playback, then at that point you'd do a separate surround mix and a separate mix for stereo. So I remember working with Chuck Ainlay when he did Dire Straits Brothers in Arms. So he did a high definition mix, and basically his approach was to take the stereo mix and recreate the stereo mix as close as possible, and then expand upon that into the 5.1 mix. And it was obviously good enough for him to win a Grammy for that. All right. So we see from Sevchik says, but you do the things in the same room, inside the DAW and outside the DAW. The mix cuts down the stereo width. So one of the things you could check is, realize that, if Sevchik, so if you're getting, disparities between what you're actually mixing, what you're hearing in the DAW versus what is being delivered, are you delivering a 32-bit floating point file? Are you using dithering? So those things, because once you do a mix in Cubase, you could be mixing in 32-bit floating point or 64-bit floating point resolution. So if you then deliver a 24-bit or 16-bit or an MP3, that could lose some of the particular, that could lose quality because you're truncating the resolution of the file. So are you delivering a 32-bit floating point file? So that's what I would try. Okay, Rasan Johnson asks, Okay, can you time stretch without pitch changing? So yeah, of course. So let's say we want to take this particular file that we have here. So if I just switch this particular mode here, I could switch my sizing to sizing applies time stretch. So let's say I want to make this longer. So now the pitch will be the same, but just longer. So in general, when you do time stretching, it's going to automatically keep the same pitch. So if I wanted this to be shorter, so here the pitch is the same, but the time has been elongated or shortened. All right. All right, we also see subcheck is just, it says about the rendering. It says it reduces the reverb tails even if you import the rendered mix into the project and compare it to the tracks inside. The output mix will sound muddier. It's a DAW problem, mate. So again, let us know exactly which resolution that you're exporting the files to. And where you hear those reverb tails, where that's very critical, is in 32-bit floating point. So. All right, so we see subtract just, yeah, so, just let us know exactly if you are exporting 32-bit floating point, so we see more discussion with that. All right, wonderful to see Darren Flake on. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped. All right, so we see from DB Music Productions, it says looking at the add track window, that's where I want the arrows/folders to be closed initially. I have too many instruments and browsing is so much slower because of this. I mean, I think that adding a track shouldn't, I think most people when they add tracks don't want the air tracks in folders. Some people don't use folders, but they don't want it to affect the status of their folders. So I understand that, browsing tracks, but, there's always just the, hit Command F and then you could search very easily for particular tracks if you need to. But, let me know if that macro would work or not work for you. But, I think that's going to be the approach to the solution. There's nothing currently in Cubase that when you add a track automatically closes folder tracks. They're kind of two unrelated functions. I understand, that when you're adding tracks, it could be, if you have a large template and, we have people, work with huge templates all the time. But I have friends with templates of 4,600 tracks and, like they've never had an issue with it. But, if you want to do that, try that particular macro. I think it'll get you what you want. All right, so we see from Sebchick says we can write in the session, take any mix here in the stream, export it, and import it into this project, compare the project tracks with mix inverted, and they won't null. I mean, import 5 tracks as mix and re-import it, switch to polarity, and the mixes won't null. All right, so sometimes, a lot of times, plugins that are emulating analog circuits will have variances as well. So they'll just have kind of randomness applied to particular files. But let's go ahead and try the process here. Do a new project. Here, let me just try a different file. Okay, so we'll take this file here, and I'm going to get rid of my, let me just remove my, okay, so it's export, audio mix down. We're going to choose, I think we're at 48, okay. Oh, sorry, let me just set the whole range here for the export. So we just export it to file as 32-bit floating point. I invert it to phase, and it cancels perfectly. So I think the export is working fine. All right. So we see from Home Studio World, Jordan says, "Hi, Greg. Please clarify difference between D, S, and M in track." All right. So we have solo, mute. So I think that those are pretty obvious, that this will solo the track, this will mute the track, and then there's also, if you click on solo with the Alt key, you get solo defeat. So let's say if this is playing, when I go to solo this, that this won't be muted. So that would defeat the solo on that particular track. And we could do that just by holding down. So as soon as we come here, just hold down the Alt or Option key on the solo. So that's what solo defeat is, so that when other tracks are soloed, that this will continue to play. So let me know if that's the DS&M that you were talking about. All right, so we see from DCarmike or DCarmich00 says, so far he's enjoyed his experience with Cubase, especially Scale Assistant / Chord Assistant are amazing. All right, so we see from DJFK, says on a Friday, hello all ravers. All right. Thanks for joining us, DJFK. All right, we have Mervin Wong ask, hi there, recently just put together a new composing template in Cubase. After adding about 150 VST MIDI tracks loaded, it crashes after I save this and try to open it again. So it could be, depending on your particular project, there's a couple things that you could try. If you're running VST instruments, you could be just running out of memory. So if you have like a large template, most composers I know, like bare minimum, would have 64 gigs of RAM. I know a lot to have 384 gigs of RAM. My personal computer has 128. So depending on the instruments that you're loading, that those particular instruments can just take up more RAM than you have available by the time you run your computer's operating system. That's going to take RAM by the time you load up those particular instruments. So what a lot of people may do is, if we go to your plugins, there is, and we'll go to the preferences. If you go to VST to plugins, there is a suspend VST3 plugin processing when audio signals are received. So if the plugin isn't doing anything, if it's a VST3 plugin, at that point it's not going to take any CPU processing power. But we also have to take into consideration that the plugin, if you're loading up lots of huge orchestral samples, that those plugins may be just taking away your memory as well. So what a lot of people do if they're working with large templates is, let's say we'll come over here, we're going to add a number of Hallions, is kind of build up their projects. And what a lot of people I found, instead of like farming out different, systems, will now just come over here and choose to disable tracks. And this will kind of disable the tracks from processing and memory. And then as they need the particular track, they just enable the track and then start to work with it there. So it could be that you're just, exceeding the memory that's on your particular system. Okay, so we see all right, and we see a further follow-up from Mervin Wong. It says, I tried to disable tracks method and it provides a little more stability, but sometimes it crashes on opening the project file. So, like when you're opening the project, are you starting with all the tracks disabled? But, if you're, also if you could let us know like how much memory you have, if it's like a large orchestral thing, or if it's just simple synthesizers or very complex synthesizers, but it could be, sounds kind of like a memory issue. All right, Puffin733 asks, I have a piano file imported into Cubase 13 Pro from Mo2DP. When I open the MIDI in the editor, the notes transmit, but the CC64 info is in red. I can't edit it, and it won't transmit to devices. All right, so let's see. I seem to remember something kind of along these lines. All right, so let's come over here. Let's put in some right, and I will put some notes in here. So sometimes when I've heard of something similar to this, it was like when the program had two different parts. But let's see if I come here. And the two parts were kind of overlaid with each other. And let's see if we merge these together. So check, what I would do, so I haven't really seen, I kind of read about red controller data that it was like almost like maybe on a different MIDI channel or a different MIDI port. What I would do is come over to the list editor and take a look in the list editor and see if these are on the same MIDI channel and see if anything looks weird here. But if you want to email me like the MIDI event, like just a project with that MIDI event, I'd be happy to take a look at it for you, Puffin733. But yeah, so but it could be maybe some anomaly coming from a different DAW. But I haven't really seen where the CC data is read. But please send it to me. I'm on vacation tomorrow, but if you send it to me tonight, I'll be happy to take a look at it, so that we could try to get it figured out for you. Okay, uno momento, once people whack the like button. All right. So we're just seeing from Mervyn Wong some more discussion about, is loading up his template, could be crashing. Yeah, so also let us know, like, how much exact memory that you have in your system. All right, so we have a question from Chisel Windu. Is it possible to save a group preset, like a group for drum spots, rooms, overheads with each channel, having all the settings like panning, inserts, sends, and interface inputs for each mic? So if you wanted to do that, so there's kind of two different approaches. So let's take a look. Okay, so let's say I have like my drum set up here and I wanted to save my drums. So if I didn't need routing, what I could do, so let's say I have, all of my inserts, my EQs, my channel strip for all of these saved. What I could now do is right click and we'll say save a track preset. And so we'll call this July 19th drums. Okay, and now if I go to a new project, I could come over to my presets. So I'm going to go to user presets, to track presets, to multi. And then we should see our July 19th drums. I drag them over, and everything is automatically recreated for me. Now that won't necessarily save if I'm routing this to a group or multiple groups, and at that point I need to, or effects. So if I had it going through different routing scenarios, but I think that this would automatically save our inputs or automatically preserved. But if we're going to groups, what I could do now is we'll close this. We'll activate this particular project. Is all we would have to do is kind of, if I had this, so I'm going to route this to a group. And let's route all the tracks to an effect send here. Okay, so what I could do now is if I wanted to, I could just temporarily erase the media. I'm going to select all the tracks with the groups. So as we come here, I would just say we're going to, go to your file menu, and we would say export selected tracks. We don't have to, we could reference the media files or copy them, so I'll just reference, hit OK. So we'll say multi-track. Then when I go to a new project, not to a new library, but let's go to a new project. We could now import a track archive. I could select all the tracks here, and then all the routing with, we could see that all the routing is automatically preserved as well right here. So that way, if you wanted to include routing, but quick, these are my studio drums or these inputs, outputs, you can just simply save it as a multi-track preset very easily. All right, so we see excellent reply from Stevie Ray or Ria. Excellent reply, Greg. Thank you so much for your constant help and font of knowledge. Always glad to be able to help people. All right, Mervyn Wong says, I recently switched from live to Cubase. Feel like I was coming out of a cave to the open world. So welcome to Cubase, and we hope to see you on many future live streams. All right, so you see Mervyn Wong says he's actually in the midst of amending his composing template. It is now 323 tracks. Millard Brown says Brothers in Arms, brilliantly mixed. Yeah, if you get a chance to listen to the 5.1 mix, it's really stunning work that Chuck did. I mean, it's an album that really lends itself well to surround. I remember I was so incredibly fortunate. I got flown over to fix a problem for Mark Knopfler's studio, or for his live recording rig, and I just happened to be in the studio when I got the surround masters back from Bob Ludwig, and listening to it at British Grove Studios in the big room was a pretty stunning experience that I'll never forget. So. Okay. Sorry, my chat field jumped. Let me find my spot. All right, so we see Sai Raj says, can you show me a small example how to turn the stereo mix into 5.1 surround sound and export it for Spotify? So again, I don't think that Spotify is going to actually play a 5.1 mix, but you know, if we have a stereo file, and as we discussed before, so let's say I want to take this, everything is now being mixed in stereo. So what I would do is go to my VST connections here. Let's add a bus. I'm going to add a 5.1 bus. I'm going to now select all the tracks, and I'm going to hold down Alt or Option plus Shift, and we're going to send the output from the stereo out to my 5.1 output. And now what I need to do, so you're going to have 5.1 speakers set up for this, and we would, you know, as we would go to the channel settings, your panner has now changed to a 5.1, so you could do all of your panning, set up your effects in surround, and then when you export, here we could just export a, so it would say do your export audio mixdown, we would choose interleaved, and that would automatically create a 5.1 interleaved mixdown file that could be encoded by the other ones, but there isn't, like, I have a stereo mix exported as a 5.1, that's not going to work. So all right, Jazzy Lamel asks, hey Greg, I'm a little confused on how the sends work. Can you show some tips on how to effectively use them with two separate vocals with two separate effects? Sure. All right, so I'm just going to take like every other track and move it down here. Okay, so let's say we have two tracks and we're going to add, let's say, a reverb and a delay. So I'm going to add effects channel tracks. So we have our reverb, and let's add our delay. Okay, now why we want to use something, you know, as simple as sends is often you want the same effect across different tracks. So this way I could run one plugin and multiple tracks could be sent to this particular plugin so that we don't have to have all these as inserts on particular tracks. So I'm going to come to this track here, and when we go to our sends, I want to send this track. We're going to send it to our reverb. I'm going to turn it on, and then we have a blend amount. So as we listen to this particular track, I'll just put it in a quick loop. I could blend the signal if I wanted more reverb. Now if I want to also send it to my delay, I could come right over here and send it to my delay. And this slider is blending, sending more to the effect. So if I have this all the way to the left, this is sending very little of the effect to the delay. But as I move this to the right, we're blending more of the delay signal in. So if I want to have, in this scenario, this track going to reverb, and I want this track to go to a delay, I could just come over here, we choose our delay, and we'll blend our delay amount in so that the top track here will be reverb. This track here, the bottom track will be delay. So all right, so, and I'll just add some space between these. So the top track is reverb and delay. Let me just turn that send down here. So reverb. So now we play this one. This is going to be. So no delay here. They only call you. So again, this track is only being sent to our reverb channel. This track is only being sent to our delay channel. And you could have up to 8 different destinations, 8 different effects tracks that you could send to directly right there from the sends into channel track. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we see from Irving Novello. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to save the samples I import into Groove Agent in the session folder so that when I have to work on my laptop setup, I don't miss them? So what some people will do is, one easy way to do it is to just come over here and let's say we have an audio track. So I will come here. We could mute the track or send its output to no bus. And then as we import samples, so this is like an easy way, but I'll show you another method as well. So let's say, okay, I have a kick. So I'm just going to drag that. I want it to go to hi-hat open. A bongo. That's all right. So let's say we have our snare. So if you drag them into a track, they're automatically in and stored within the project file. And then if we build a Groove Agent kit, so let's say we add an instrument, we'll start with a blank Groove Agent instance. Then we can say, okay, I want this kick here, I want this snare, and I want this hi-hat. So we could have our samples there, but if you didn't put it into a track, what you can do is click right here and say export kit with samples. So again, on the agent itself, choose export kit with samples. You'll see like a little, and what you want to do is actually click on, and this isn't obvious, but click on export files. And then if you wanted to come over here, we see our file path. So we can say, okay, I want to go up and I want to put this into documents. And let's just say and then you could just at this point navigate it to the particular project folder. So wherever you want to. So I will, at this point, let's just come over. And let's see my normal. So we'll choose July 19th, 2024. Okay, we're going to give it a name. Okay, so I have, some of the samples are protected, but that's what you could do. So again, just export the kit with samples, click on export files, and navigate to your project folder. So let's use some copy protected samples, but all right, so we see from DB Music Productions, it says, thank you for your help. I'll go back and take a look at the macro demo you did. Cubase used to be different in this way. It's a mild annoyance. I really appreciate your help. So I don't think Cubase ever, like when adding an instrument track, closed all the folders. So I'm not aware of that function. Not saying it wasn't there, but I don't remember it in 33 years I've been running Cubase. All right, so we have Keith Cov music production. I found it scanning large folders in the media browser. Innuendo 13 tends to stop midway. Any idea why? So it could be there is like a, so let's go to your preferences, to Media Bay. So I think that, if you have, you could expand, try setting the maximum items in results list to higher than 10,000. I think you could do 100,000. So try increasing that preference there and see if that makes a difference. So once again, preferences or settings, depending on your OS. Media Bay, try increasing maximum items in results list. All right, we see kind words from Jay Allen. Says you're one of the best, Greg. Love you, man. Johnny Ray from the Bay Area. Thanks for the kind words. Means a lot. All right, so we see from Tim Weinheimer, Wavelab 11 worked to load the older Apple format. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, so let me know, Tim, what format it was, just out of curiosity. All right, so we have a question from DMT Records and Visuals. How to do automation of the whole track? Okay, so let's... Okay, so, once we come here, we can, so let's say we've done automation. So, we have, let's say we see our whole track here of the sub kick snare. So as we're playing this, let me just revert this quickly so we can hear it. Okay, so if you want one kind of static value for the track, all you'd have to do is just you could go to the automation lane and just drop in the node. So we could adjust that node up or down But if you wanted to, automate the particular track, all you'd have to do is click on the W and R. And then if you don't do any, as soon as there's different automation modes, but you can just move kind of the fader here. So let's So as soon as I just grab the fader here, we can automate. And there's different automation modes where you can say, okay, I want to, and we see, you may see the automation modes here, or if you hit F6 on your computer keyboard. So we could also just say, okay, we want to automate to start and to end. So as soon as I grab a fader here, and now that will automatically write the automation at the beginning and end of the project for you. So if you want one static value, you can do that. Or if you just wanted to, and if you want to set it to a very particular value, so okay, I want this at -6, we could go to the info line and set the value and adjust accordingly. So let me know if that makes sense for what you want to do. All right, so we have Swapnadeep Ghosh, or Gosh, just saying, hey, thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Chisel Windu, I record 2 mono vocal takes simultaneously. Is it possible to take these 2 mono files and easily turn them into 1 mono file? Okay, so let's say I have these 3 kicks. Okay, so let's see if I think we might be able to do this with the render in place. So let's go to edit. We'll try render in place here. Let's do render settings. I'm going to do dry. Transfer settings. This may automatically just do it. So let's say kick mix. And let me just select the tracks here. And try again. Okay, so I think this will do it as stereo. I'll just do a mix down and we'll make sure. I think that will do it as a stereo mix. Yeah. So if you want, we could just come right over here and choose export audio mix down. So I'm going to take like these 3 kicks. We're going to do multi, take these 3 kicks. Or we could actually, I'll do single and I'll just solo those 3. And then we're going to export as a mono down mix and create an audio track. And then we could just have our file just mixed down right here. It will do it between the left and right locators. So as we listen to it, this should be all of our kicks mixed down. So you could solo the 3 files, export audio mix down, choose to do a mono down mix, and create audio file. All right, so we see from Rasan Johnson, is there a way to stretch a vocal or event without changing its pitch? So yeah, I think we showed it a little earlier, but we'll show it quickly again. So let's just grab.
Stay with me all night, wanna know you inside, kiss.
All right, so let's say we have that vocal. So when we go to our sizing mode, there's 3 different modes. So we can say sizing applies time stretch. So when I do this, I say I want this to be shorter in time. So we'll listen to the original file here again.
Stay with me all night, wanna know you.
Now I want it to be faster, but the same pitch.
Stay with me all night, wanna know you inside, kiss on me all night, wanna know you.
So you could just kind of stretch it to fit the region. You could also come over here, go to your audio, to processes, and here you have time stretch as well. So you could do time stretching there, and there's kind of, so we could do that directly right there. So, but probably just, and if you want to get to this mode of the sizing, when you have the selection tool, if you hit 1 on your kind of computer QWERTY keyboard, like above Q on an English or American keyboard, you can cycle between the different modes so you get to sizing applies time stretch. Gerald Ely just says kind words that, you know what, Greg is so cool. So I wish my son thought that. So, but thank you for the kind words. All right. All right. Michael Teen says Revelation today, solo and solo defeat with the Alt key or Option key. All right. Miller Brown says super cool to learn something in every live stream. All right, so we see a question, how to decorate the control room like you. So my control room is really, you know, what it is, it's, you know, your control room will get populated and more stuff will get added in your control room as you define additional functionality. So when you go to our audio connections, which you get access by hitting F4, we go to the control room, and now that I have a talkback, I have headphones, I have different Q mixes, different monitors set up, all of those will just kind of automatically populate directly into our particular control room. So it's whatever you have. So if I took out the, you know, my phones, I could come right here. So I remove that, then we'll see that our phones will disappear from our control room. So as we add more elements, that's when they become visible and available inside of the control room. Okay. Everyone's happy to see H and K pop in, leave a comment. All right. All right, Millard Brown asks a question. When using a marker track with cycle markers to designate individual songs, is there an easy way to select one cycle marker and get rid of everything on each side, leaving just the one song? Yeah, I'll show you a trick with this. So we'll come over here. I'll just kind of duplicate something and we'll pretend they're different songs. Okay, so as I'm here, we'll say this is song 1, song 2, song 3, 4, 5. All right, so I'm going to come over here and first I'm just going to, let's add a marker track. All right, and I'll just do another new marker track with just cycles. Okay. So I'm going to go here. Let's add cycle marker here. So I'm just selecting event, hitting the letter P, and then adding cycle markers. Okay, so let's say we have that. Now the trick that we could do is, let's say I want to use song 3 here. So if we grab the range selection tool and double click between, like in the middle of the cycle marker you want to keep, double click, then go to edit, to range, and choose crop. And that should, let me just try that again. So it should be edit, range, crop. Not sure why it's working. All right. All right, let me try just a smaller region. Let's see if the crop works. Thought that would do it, but we'll find a way to get it. All right, try it one more time here. So maybe it's within contiguous regions. All right, so let's see if we could figure out another method. All right, so we have that range. Let's so maybe the crop doesn't work with the other events. Let me just try just on a selection here. All right, so if there's silence, I think if these were all contiguous, like a contiguous recording, let me just try this. Okay, so now let's say if it's a contiguous recording, I think we could come over here and go to range to crop, and then that would kind of blow everything else out. So double click, so we could do this. And range to crop. Now, if they are separated, kind of like what we had here, we could come over, we could do a project logical editor preset, I think. Let me just reset this. And we can say that we want to delete events, and we'll go to position is unequal to our outside cycle. So we could come here, and then that could delete all of the events outside the cycle. So if I'm here, I could just double click, or if you just select the cycle marker and hit P, and then if you even wanted to say locators to selection as a precondition here. So if I select the marker, like the cycle marker itself, we can say locators to selection, then delete all the events. So let's see if this works. So you could do it like that as well. So let me know if that works for you, Millard. But if they're all contiguous, you could just use the range crop. So edit to range and crop. If they're not contiguous or there's silence between them, then utilizing the project logical editor is a pretty good way to go. So let me know if that makes sense for you. All right, so we see Home Studio World just says, yes, the solo defeat confused me. Thanks, Greg. All right. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin on. Everyone give a big woof to Stella, Mark's dog. Thanks for joining us from Montana. See Gerald Ely saying, no hangout next Tuesday. Tuesday is $5 at the movies. Maybe I'll go see a movie while I'm on vacation. Haven't been to a theater in a couple years. All right, Shekhar Nath Regmi asks, how do you install VST plugins in Cubase? I did download and extract the .dll file, but it won't show. So, you know, each plugin is going to be installed, independently of what Cubase is doing. So, where you copied the VST plugin folder, so if it's a VST2 plugin, if we come over here, what you want to do is just to make sure that you go to your studio menu to VST plugin manager. And as we kind of look at your various, effects plugins here, we could actually see the exact path. So VST3 plugins, and this path will be slightly different on Mac or PC. And if you're running a VST2 plugin, make sure that it's a 64-bit plugin, because 32-bit plugins haven't been supported for, since version 8.5 or something. So it has to be a 64-bit plugin. And if it's a VST2 plugin and it's kind of in a folder, so VST3 plugins are going to be placed into a fixed folder. But if we come over here for VST2 plugins, they could be placed into any folder. And then we have to tell Cubase where to look for those plugins in particular folders. And we do that by clicking on this little settings. And then we could click on the little plus, and then we could define where the VST2 plugins are. So, the plugin installation is not really a Cubase function. So as, most VST3 plugins will have an installer to place it into the correct folder automatically. If not, then you could, just come over here, click on the I. That would show you the VST3 plugin path, and make sure it's in there. Make sure it's a 64-bit plugin. If they're not showing up, that could be in the block list, meaning that these particular plugins may be causing issues, system stability issues within the system as well. So check those things. But VST2 plugins can be put anywhere. You just have to tell Cubase where to look for it. And VST3 plugins are going to go into very specific location, so that Cubase knows where to look for it, because VST2 plugins are kind of a mess that different companies would install them to different folders, and then people couldn't find where they were installed to. So, but give that a try. All right. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. Let me find my spot. Okay. All right, we see Michael Teams has granted Mark and Stella 1 gallon of chocolate chip ice cream. Okay. All right, so we see Miko Sunman. Hi, I'm planning on purchase a new MX series Mac for Cubase. I've seen Cubase as being able to use both performance and efficiency cores, which is nice. But which core should I prefer? And we see hashtag, I guess, M3 versus M2. So if you have a choice between, you'd get probably stronger performance with more performance cores versus efficiency cores. So if you had kind of the option, I would lean on the side of performance cores over efficiency cores. So the efficiency cores are probably less expensive, but they don't, and there's a reason why they're less expensive, because they don't provide as much power for your system. So if I had to, err on the side of one, and sometimes, and there's an interesting YouTube video, where, some of the older Macs are faster for DAW performance than the newer ones, because the newer ones are using more efficiency cores than performance cores. See, Darren Flake just says, lately saw people switching to Mac and dumping PC as the speed and fan noise is lower. Hopefully Windows 12 will be more faster. So I think it's really kind of more not the operating system, but more kind of the processor architecture. And I think Intel is doing stuff. AMD is doing very similar stuff as well. So see Jazz Dude claiming his preference for 5.1 DTS is the best sound. I always like the DTS algorithm, personally as well. Okay, so we see from Miller to Brown, which makes the cool red background under the channel faders in the MixConsole. So I think it might be, is it when it's like a track is in record? So say, is this what you're noticing? Like when let's see if it's, or I'm not sure if it's like, let's add a bunch more tracks here. Sorry. So I'm not sure which red color. So sometimes people see this white color, and that indicates which channels the control surface is controlling. But maybe if you could specify a little more, Millard, I could try to figure it out for you. All right, so you see from Miller says there's a project Greg brought up where just the fader on the left side of the channel display. Okay, so maybe it's like this channel here. So generally these are input channels. So when we see the red fader cap, those are generally input and output channels. So let's say if I come here to my audio connections, I go to inputs, and I'm going to add a number of inputs. So, and then we'll see those red channels, and that indicates that it's an input channel, or conversely an output channel. So that's physically coming in from hardware or going out to hardware is what the red fader caps indicate. So let me know if that's it, Millard. All right, so we have Rude Screen checking in from South UK. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you back on. All right, so we see good news from Mark Rabin that their fire is 40% contained. We hope it gets all sorted out for you in Montana. Yeah, my brother in Texas went a week without electricity in Houston after the hurricane barrel. All right, so we see, Greg, how do I send MIDI events to an insert effect? Also, I find it very hard to use third-party arpeggiators to drive instrument tracks. Could you please walk through this? So a lot of times it could depend on how the instrument is set up. So let's see if we can find kind of an example here. So sometimes when we deal with plugins that have, that receive MIDI, let me just... Okay, so let's say we want to come over here and we have, we'll add an audio track. I'll just drop something in here.
All is love of my life, building walls, nails, and nerd. Am I here alone again? It's worse to love you and lose. We gave every inch of our soul, but I got it all.
Okay, so let's say we have this, and let's say we have a plugin that accepts MIDI. So, like, I'm gonna go ahead and load up as an insert a vocoder plugin here. All right, so the vocoder, we could take MIDI input from a destination. So I'm going to create a MIDI track, and then for its outputs, we're going to come over here and we'll say, okay, I want to go to this, and we want to send it to the vocoder. So as we look right here, now this MIDI track is going to output to the vocoder. So, and at this point, I'm going to say we want this to be external. So as we would play, as I play down the keys, it's automatically being sent right there. So I'll just kind of show it with the onboard keyboard. So again, this is a plugin that accepts MIDI. So when it has MIDI and it's added, that shows up as a MIDI port or destination for the MIDI track. So again, we've set this to go out not to a particular instrument, but to like the MIDI input of a track. So as we play, I will come so then MIDI is being sent directly to the plugin. So you could do it just like that. So check to see if once the plugin is instantiated that, and you could just come over here and let's just add a MIDI track. So it's not going to be an instrument track, but a MIDI track. And then we're going to send that MIDI, and you'll see probably under sidechain the different destinations, and then right there, and if you just kind of hover over, if the name is too long, you could just see, okay, that's going to the vocoder. This is going to the VST Connect output. So right there, you do the routing, and that sends MIDI data from the track to an insert plugin, but the plugin has to be able to accept the MIDI. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right. Okay, reading through comments. I see Jazz Dude's doing some moderation. Okay, so Mike Braley just asked, is there a way to split a signal on a track without sending it to a send? Or another channel example would be processing left and right differently, adding compression and blending it in. So if we take this particular vocal track here, and I'll just take the vocoder off. So let's say we will come over to the channel settings. So we'll hit the E button and let's add an insert. So we'll say, okay, I want compression. So we'll come over here to dynamics. I want the black valve. All right, now as we do this, we'll see a routing tab at the bottom. So we'll see inserts, but also routing. And now I can come over here. We want this to be a mono insert, and we could double click. And then this is set to pass through the left channel and not process the right channel. So now we could come over and let's just turn, we'll say okay. So the left channel is being processed with
Building walls, nails, and nerves.
but the right channel isn't. And let's add a different effect on the right channel. So we'll go to our inserts, click on the inserts tab, and let's do just like a nasty EQ, something obvious. Okay, so we'll kind of do a pull tech and really boost the EQ. Again, go to routing, and we're going to choose mono. So we want the right side to be very bright. So the left side will be compressed, the right side bright.
Building walls, nails, and nerd. Building walls, nails, and nerd.
So then the left side
Am I here alone again?
and the right side will be processed independently. So again, go to your inserts on the channel and then go to the routing for the inserts. All right, so we have Irving Novello just sending greetings from Mexico. Thanks for joining us today. Glad to have you on. All right, we see Michael Team says Gareth says hi, he's out and about. Okay, so we have Donnie asks, Greg, I have multiple parts on different tracks selected inside a cycle. How can I make a project logical editor to deselect parts on a track named drums while keeping all other parts selected? Okay. So I'll just drag in a couple of files here, put them on different tracks. Okay. Now I will add just a couple tracks. We'll call them drums. Okay.
Am I here alone again?
All right, so I'll just kind of record on different locations here on these tracks. Okay, so we have a lot of tracks that contain, a lot of events that contain the word drums and many tracks that don't. Okay, so let's set up the condition here. Okay, so, okay, so we'll say inside a selected cycle, please make, okay, I have multiple parts on different tracks inside a cycle, so let's set a cycle of these events. How can I make a project logical editor deselect parts on the tracks named drums? Okay. Okay, so let's go to our project logical editor. We'll give this a try. So we're going to choose deselect. And we're going to say media type is, or container type is going to be equal to event. To position is going to be inside cycle. And the name contains drum. Okay, so let's say these are selected, these have different names, so I want to deselect these that have the word drum. So just come here, click apply, and then everything else was selected. So let's go ahead and just select all these events again. So again, we want to deselect containers, events that are in the position of in the cycle, and that the name contains drum. So now all those events are deselected. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, wonderful to see Val on. All right, Mark Rabin asks, Greg, can you bring chord pad patterns to a MIDI track by copy drag to include a pattern instead of just one long chord? Yeah, so when we're doing it on the chord pads here, when we drag it out, it's going to be kind of the one long chord, as you mentioned, even if we have the patterns. So the patterns are kind of intended for like a real-time performance. So if we come here, let me just I'll quickly load up just a quick instrument. All right, so all right, so now, you know, as we would, so from the chord pads, you know, so if I take this, what we have is the chords will be dragged out and be block chords. But if we record the chord pads themselves, and it's really just a matter of so it's really kind of more intended to be more of a kind of a playable kind of instrument type of function. So, you know, just hit record, but when you drag it out, you're dragging the chord and not the pattern with the chord. I'll request that as a feature again, which I've done a couple times. But I realize that people want that functionality. So. All right, you see Michael Pierce is sneaking out for about an hour, so hopefully we'll see you back. Okay, so we see Keeley's just says, why when I want to copy and paste MIDI on the editor, the alt and drag don't work. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so let me just get rid of some. Okay, so I'm just doing alt and drag, and that seems to work as expected. So I would say if I want to come here, and let's see if we copy it out of the range of the instrument, you'll get an enlarged part message. But again, just holding down alter option. So if you hold down, you know, to make sure that you select the events, move them, and then you can move them first, because if you select the events and click with the alt key already held down, that will split the particular events, but now we could just select the events, then hold down the Alt or Option key, drag, let go of the mouse, and then you could so make sure that you're holding the Alt Option key the whole time during the copy. So I'm going to release the mouse, then release the Alt Option key. So, but it seems to work for me. Let me know if I'm doing anything differently than you are. Okay, so you see Miller Brown just says to Greg, the contiguous recording works for me. He's cropping live concerts into songs. Yeah, so just use the crop function. Great, my chat field jumped on me, but I think I'm close to where we were. So we see Jazzy Lamel says, hey Greg, will the vocal chain be a permanent fixture of Cubase in the future version? So I don't anticipate it leaving for a long time. We still have plugins from 25 years ago in Cubase after all these years. So it's a very popular plugin that was all done in-house. So I anticipate it being a part of Cubase for a long time. Okay, so we see Tim Weinheimer says there's an Apple M4A file from CD that was originally imported into iTunes on a Windows PC. The file type wouldn't show load me in. Okay. Yeah, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, so the M4As aren't supported, but all right, so you see from Miller Brown says, hi Greg, regarding the red background, it was the background behind the fader cap showing red while the channel colors were nice beige. I'll try to see if I notice that as we go on. But I'll look at the timestamp of the video when you ask the question when I'm doing the index later tonight. All right, so we have a question from Ace Amadeus. Thanks for joining us today. His question is, hi Greg, Retrolog synth bass chart topper. After recording one note, it never stops playing. What is the best option to stop note? Is there a MIDI stop function I can assign to the track, please? Okay, so let's load it up. Take a look. Okay, let me just look for the... All right, let me see if I can find that particular preset quickly. don't see that particular preset. Let me just look. Let me see if it's in the MPE. All right. All right, let me just look in Big Media Bay, see if we can find it there. Okay, here we go. Okay, so let's say. All right, let me just check, see if there's effects on it. Okay, so I just hit a note on message and let me just try recording. Alright, so I did a note on, note off message, and I still see continuing to play as you describe. Let's see if it's the delay. That's alright, so it's not effects. Let's see if it's just okay, it's just the arpeggiator. So let's see if we could I think if we just maybe turn this to hold to off. So we'll play that and see if it stops. Yeah, so go to the arpeggiator page. So you'll see kind of like the synth page, the arpeggiator page, the effects page. And on hold, that was set to on, just simply turn it to off. And then as soon as you as soon as the MIDI note off message or the MIDI note off message occurs, then the program will stop. It's kind of a cool patch. All right. Seeing discussion on audiophile stuff. Jazz Dude giving some good advice. Okay, so Mark Rabin says, how do you undo a cut W cut tool? I remember Greg showed us earlier. So I'm trying to remember what a cut W tool. Let me just trying to know what the undo a cut with, okay, I'm sorry, okay, sorry. How do you undo a cut with the cut tool? I remember Greg showed us earlier. All right, so if we have like an event here, I'll just make this larger. So at this point, if you had split, you know, you could just, you know, like pencils, scissors, glue guns, you can now glue the event together like so. So instead of, so if we now come here and if I want to join multiple events together, hold down the Alt or Option key to the left, and then where it was all split into different sections, like here and here, I could hold down the Alt or Option key with the glue, and just simply at that point, that would undo the split. So let me know if that's what you mean, Mark. All right, James Dalzell asks, hi Greg, how do we adjust samples with different tempos to play together in time under one tempo? Okay, so let's come over here, let's do a new project. All right, so as we're auditioning different loops, so let's come over to, okay, so I'm gonna come over here. I'm going to activate this little function here in the Media Bay preview that says align beats to tempo. So if my tempo now is set to 80 beats a minute, so I'm going to adjust my tempo here. Now as we listen to that loop, again, that's automatically going to preview that loop at the tempo that we want. So let's say I switch this tempo to 120. I drop this in. So as long as I kind of keep this in, this places the file into what we call musical mode. Okay, so now when I play this particular track, it's going to be aligned with the metronome of the project. And if I don't mute it. So now we'll come over here and say, okay, I want maybe a bass part. Now if I take this off and I drop it in, this audio file will play back at its original tempo. So this will be out of sync. So, but what we could do is take this particular file and place it into what we call musical mode. So it's not too far off, but once we place it into musical mode, this file will automatically be in sync with the project tempo. So if I slow down, so again, kind of previewing, you know, if we preview with the align to beats on, when we drop it in, it's automatically going to be tempo synced and placed into musical mode. If it's not, then just simply select the events and turn them into musical mode, and then they will automatically play back in sync. And if I wanted to do like tempo changes, we can now come over here. Let's add a tempo track, turn it on, and we will activate it and say, okay, I want it to play here. I want it to ramp up and down. And now everything's going to speed up. So if you are dragging in files from here, just put this on. It's gonna audition a loop at the project tempo and place it into musical mode. If you already have files in the project, select them and then make sure that they're in musical mode right here from the info line. And then they'll automatically play and kind of be like almost like a tempo parasite to your project. All right, so we see Darren Mack says, happy Friday, Greg. I was messing around in Halion 7 last night and found a misspelled word in the properties drop down. The word should be bright, but it's spelled B-I-R-G-H-T. How can I report that? So yeah, I think it's already been passed along to the Halion team. So I saw one man in his songs videos where he pointed that out as well. So, but thanks for letting me know. All right, David M. asks, great to see you on. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Greg. Can you tell me where the return to start position is moved in Cubase 13? I made a key command for it, easy enough, but why move it from preferences, transport? Why it was moved is because a lot of people, couldn't find that particular preference, so they moved it to the transport start modes, and you could just change it right here. So again, transport to start modes, return to start position on stop. So just simply go right there, and that's where you could enable the function so that you don't have to hunt through preferences. So while it could be, if you're used to the old kind of obscure location, which I've gotten asked thousands of times where that preference is, now it's a bit more obvious and available right on the transport menu from the main program window. All right, wonderful to see Daniel on today. All right, so we see a comment from Mark Rabin, says, by the way, Greg, thanks for the preload parameter and Groove Agent helps lots. Thanks. So good. I'm glad you got that sorted out. All right, so we see Daniela checking in from Bochum, Germany, as Da Vinci Girl. Welcome to the live stream. Great to have you on. See Tim Weinheimer's finally getting into Wavelab 11 Pro to learn the dark art of mastering. Yeah, it is always a bit mysterious. And you watch like really great mastering engineers, and they just move one little thing so subtly, it makes such a huge difference. It's always fascinating to watch. All right. So Daniel asked, so stupid question. I'm almost finished with my Cubase course and I want to get some practice, but kicks and hats, etc., don't really sound great. Where can I find a specific sound I want? Kind of going through Media Bay in general, there's, lots and lots of different kick sounds. So let's say if I was looking for kick sounds, I may come over to Media Bay. We'll start off, say, okay, I'm looking for loops and sounds, and there's tons just like in the Groove Agent library. So let's say, okay, I'm looking for kicks. Okay, and there will be kind of a whole category that we could also just come over here. Say, okay, I'm looking for drum and percussion. We have our subcategory. So now I'm looking for kick drums. And we could choose different characters. So you can and go on and on. And then if you wanted to categorize it for, okay, I'm doing EDM, I'm doing hip hop, we could come over here and just say, musical category, or style. So you have different functions that you could search for, but, I doubt that, make sure that you've gone through every kick and hi-hat. So if you now want to come over and look at hi-hats, you could just kind of scroll through hi-hats, and you could do this in many different libraries very easily. Okay, so we see from Mark Rabin says, like I cut with scissors, and then instead of undo, there was an option to uncut. All right, so let's take a look. So say I split with the scissors. So we can undo the split. I know there is a kind of a dedicated, I would usually, and maybe just kind of force of habit, I would always, personally, what I always do is just kind of just grab the glue gun to do that, but I don't know, there may be a split or join, there may be like a join function. But, so let me know if I guess you're not looking for the glue tool, Mark, for that. All right, so we see Daniela just says, want to send some greetings and wish me a wonderful vacation. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Got up early and mowed my grass and just had to pack and do the index tonight, and then should be all set. So looking forward to a week off. We're not as good at vacationing in the United States as Europeans and other countries. You see Tim Weinheimer is just saying that arpeggiator will do it every once you figure out the tricky hold button. Yeah, it's the first time I kind of ran into that, but it's kind of a cool thing. All right, so we see Yamin Faham. Would transferring a Cubase profile to Nuendo make Nuendo malfunction or lag? I don't think so. I think it's going to be kind of the same functions. We could do a quick test here. Save this to desktop. Okay, so, and let's import profile. So it looks like that import's fine, but I wouldn't anticipate a lag in any way. But just kind of carry those particular settings over. All right, so we see Daniela is buying a Roland Keytar Edge tomorrow at Tomon. See Mark Rabin, I just says, I swear you said this. I remember you showing us this, Greg. I think I remember. So I will see if it pops in my head. We'll probably be in the middle on the beach while I'm on vacation. But if not, I'll make a note to show it on the next live stream. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher from Oxford via Royal Wooten Bassett. Daniel's comment said, yeah, Greg, I heard this lots of times. The Americans are great to do business with, but they're always surprised by the amounts of holidays we have here. So yeah, even when I started at Yamaha, I started with 2 weeks of vacation. So and even then I may take, a week and a half off a year, just busy with work stuff and life. So, but we don't, as a culture, I don't think Americans vacation or holiday as well as other countries. I see my European friends just doing it very well. See, Gerald Ely says he used to work at UPS, and UPS doesn't believe in holidays. So I guess all the packages have to get there. But it used to be our holiday schedule in the old days was based on UPS, because if UPS wasn't shipping, then we couldn't ship product out of our warehouse. So if UPS had a holiday off, we would have the same holiday off. So sometimes companies mirror the UPS schedule. All right, so we see from Ace Amadeus, Greg, what is the MIDI solution to inform chords to stop playing? On another track, I have some chords that continue to play, but they do not have arpeggiator or any effects. Thanks. So generally the MIDI note off message will, take care of that for you. If not, if you have notes that are stuck, that seem like, and some instruments may get stuck, and sometimes people may, do some MIDI editing where the note off message can get obscured. You could always just go to, if it's like where you think a note is hung, just go to your MIDI menu and choose reset, and that will send an all notes off message to everything. And if you have a particular file that you're running into that, please feel free to email to me, ace at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so we see from Daniel, who just asked, so Greg, let's say I start finding appropriate stuff on MediaBay, trying to follow the style. Do I just drag them onto empty Groove Agent pads? Yeah, that's all you have to do. So let's say we just come right over here. Let's add an instrument track. Let's make it Groove Agent. I like that kick. Let's find, I like that sound. Let's make that like a percussion. Okay, crash and so now you have so that's really all you had to do is just kind of drag and drop to pads right there. So we see Mark Raven just maybe giving our clue. Let me see if this sinks in anyway. So I remember Greg showing a clip gain idea and he reversed a cut somehow. So nothing's really kind of popping in my head, Mark, unfortunately, but I'm sure it will maybe over my vacation. But like a lot of times we come here, we could do kind of, you know, like if we let me just get my, you know, split and then, you know, but I think, you know, just, so I'm not sure if it, you know, like a lot of times I may do something that's like kind of a minimize breaths macro. And that will kind of take it and split it. So, but it's still a separate event. So, but I'll continue to think of it, Mark, and maybe if you search through cubaseindex.com, maybe we could find it there. All right, Da Vinci Girl asked, when will be the next live stream because of vacation? So I'll be out for 1 week. So it'll be July 30th, so a week from this upcoming Tuesday. I see Tim K, just a great comment. Says, thank goodness for the freedom from magnetic medium. I still love me some vinyl, but I don't miss splicing tape. Yeah, I don't mind. When I worked at a big studio in New York, I was kind of the second assistant engineer, which meant I had to do the tape calibration they would do it about every 90 minutes to 2 hours, where you put test tones on the tape and calibrate the tape machine. So I was always the one that had to do that. So I don't miss that part of analog recording. All right, so we see Danielle just says, come to Europe, man. We'll take a walk along some European rivers and mountains and stuff. So, yeah, I was hoping to, I want to do a European trip with my son and wife. So, but, yeah, I haven't been to Europe in 5 years since COVID. I was supposed to go, I was scheduled to be in Germany, like, the week that they closed all international travel down, but that trip got canceled a couple days before, so I haven't been there, and I miss being in Europe. And maybe Daniel will tell us where in Europe he is, so if I go there, that I could have a tour guide. But I always love my time in Europe. and had wonderful times in Australia and Japan as well. Canada. All right. All right, thanks for the kind words about vacation, Ace. All right. Gerald Eagley just says, "Hey, Greg, that was when UPS liked its employees when they had holidays." I guess it's in our, our contemporary Amazon world where we expect to order something on Sunday morning and we're mad if it's not at our house by 5 p.m. I guess the whole landscape has changed in logistics. All right, you see Gerald Ely is going to take off. All right. Daniel just says, "Thanks, Greg. It seems solutions are always much simpler than I think. Then I end up complicating and get nowhere." Yeah, so it's always nice just to kind of keep things simple and learn fast workflows and learn them well. So we see Daniel just asks on Groove Agent, I assume there's a button to save the kits that I create. Yeah, so all you have to do, again, is on the agent itself, right click, and you could export the kit with samples. So you could put the samples into dedicated location, or you could just save it as a preset, and then Cubase will automatically look for the samples in their original locations for you. All right. Just reading through comments. See Tim Weinheimer just mentioning to Tim K about the old half-speed mastering. So, yeah, those are always kind of fun to get. See, Daniel says he's in Croatia near Italy. So famous for beaches with lots of little islands and beautiful clear water. And of course, he lives in the other part of the country. So, yeah, I've seen some travel shows to Croatia. It looks really beautiful. So I've had friends travel there and really liked it. All right, we see DJFK says Berlin is cool. So, yeah, I got to go there once on a side trip from Hamburg. All right, Daniel asks, what is the difference between exporting and saving a kit? Sorry for complicating again. So it's not a complication. So when we save a kit, at this point, we'll open it up. And when we save a kit, we could save it as a preset. And the samples that are used in that kit will load up, but they're going to load up from their original locations. So if we had copied it into into the project and then into Groove Agent, it would be stored, it would be referenced from the particular project. And if we opened up that kit in a different project, it would load those samples up from the audio files of that project, the original location. So the presets that are saved are only using a reference point to where the audio samples are present. When we export a kit, we come over here and we export the kit. We could choose, and again, we would say export files, that it would automatically export the preset that we give it a name, and it would also simply export all of the samples and place it that are used in that particular kit, and move the samples to a specified folder. So this way that preset could be independent and the audio file location could be independent of the project or the original location. So if we were building a lot of different drum agent kits, at that point we may want to put them into a Groove Agent user Groove Agent kit folder, and that way we know exactly where all of our kits are, and we could load up those as presets into Cubase. So presets will only make references to the audio files. When we export, that will actually move the audio files to the exported location that's been defined. Okay. Mark Rabin says, watch out for sharks. Yeah, so my wife is very concerned about that. And the undertow, which is pretty famous at where we're going to, Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. We just hope all the planes are sorted out by tomorrow. All right, so microphone. I'm not sure if that's a cool name or just clever spelling. Asks, hi, could you tell me how to set the VU meter to act like a traditional one? It only seems to react if it's set to VU dB FS. If I use it in VU dB, it's not very reactive, thanks. So it is acting like a traditional VU meter. So as we're working with it, let's come over here. So, but probably what you're used to seeing in a VU meter is going to be for the VU dBFS to full scale. So when you come here, just kind of set it to VU dBFS, and then your typical VU meter levels will kind of function as, but the output level that the DAW through your converters is sending is -18. It's not at 0. It's just how audio equipment is going to be gain staged. So that's why the VU, so just simply come over here. You could save it as a preset. So just set it to VU dB full scale. So it's functioning correctly. You just have to tell it how you want it to function. All right, Daniel asks, can I call a song completed, or even a song if it has 4 instruments? One of them is Groove Agent stuff, and then some ambience and melody and harmony and done. Can this be professional? If it sounds good and you sell it and you make money, it's professional. So if it sounds good, no one cares how many tracks you use. So I think it's really easy to get caught up in, I have so many different options and tools available that I should use them. But think of Ace of Base, I Saw the Sign, where it was like 3 or 4 sounds and vocals. So sometimes very simple stuff works really well. Look at early hip hop music, and what was interesting about early hip-hop music is a lot of it was very short and repetitive, and it kind of defined a genre, not because it was intentional, but because they didn't have that much sampling space on the sampler. So, if you're if you had 1 megabyte in your sampler, you worked with small samples. So, you had short, repetitive samples. So there's lots of rap stuff and hip hop stuff that's 2 or 3 tracks, so it doesn't have to be, 400 tracks. You look at in Sound on Sound magazine, everyone has, 600 tracks in their project. And, I will talk to kind of veteran engineers and they just kind of laugh at it. And it's like, where people are putting a plug in for like different words in a track and the plugin is just kind of left, or so it's really easy sometimes not to make a decision, and sometimes limiting yourself to like, I want to do something in 4 tracks that sounds really good. If you I remember talking to Hans Zimmer about this, and he says like the best discipline he ever got as being a MIDI programmer, like working the sequencer, he got the discipline of working with like an early Roland, hardware sequencer where you could have 8 notes playing, like an MC50 or something. I probably have the model wrong. But, if you have to make an orchestral thing sound good with 8 notes, make it sound great with 8 notes. And if it doesn't sound great with 8 notes, it may not sound great with 16 or 64 or 1600 notes. So if you kind of think about, I think a lot of times placing emphasis on arrangements is kind of missed a lot in contemporary productions, and people kind of look for technology as a solution for everything. But if you have 4 tracks and it sounds great, hey, that's, if it sounds good, it's good, period. All right, Uno Memento asks, Greg, show us how to set up vocal harmonies. Thanks. All right, so let me open up a different project here. All right, so with vocal harmonies, one of the great things is to be able to kind of utilize this with utilizing it with the chord track. So I'm going to come over, let's say in this example, I want to add harmonies to my track. So let's say we start off kind of with the piano event. So now so I'm going to select the track and I'm going to generate chord tracks. Let's see how fast we can do harmonies here from scratch. All right, so we're going to do that. Let's get a project, chord track. Let's create chord events. And now I want to take a phrase, go to audio, and let's generate harmony voices. Let's do 2 harmony voices. So by the time we got to the first chorus, I could add harmonies on a track. So it just kind of gives you an idea. So to do it, just know what the chords are, select the range where you want the harmonies to be generated, and because the harmonies are going to be generated based upon the chords. So as we come over here, we're going to now just go to audio and say generate harmony voices. You can pick how many you want. You go up to 4, hit OK, and now so super fast and easy, just utilizing that. So it's a great feature. And I know people that are vocal coaches to like most of the big pop stars. One of my friends is just a guy that will sit down and do vocal coaching and training with them, and he uses this function just to say, okay, this is the harmony, hear the harmony, sing this, and he could generate it and make sure it's all musically correct because it's based upon the supplied chord track. All right, Daniel asks, I guess this is with the Groove Agent question, so exporting is safer for future keepsake. So I would say that if you're super careful and aware of where all of your audio files are, that either approach could work. But if you've migrated from computer to computer or multiple generations of computers, having it as an exported file, I think, is a little safer and cleaner. And Daniel just says, for example, I could just copy and paste the export folder to the new PC and it's there. So yes, you could do that. So Mark Rabin just saying his father is there currently. He's in Hilton Head. So looking forward to it. I've never been, but my friends that have been there have all spoken very highly of it. So it's just a quick 1 hour flight from where we are. So. All right, Darren Flake. Greg, can you demonstrate how you in7 modulation on synths or instruments? I'm still exploring the full version. Is there any functions that has to be looked at? Thanks. Okay, see Mark Raven saying his dad's in South Carolina. All right, so let's take a look at some modulation. I'm not the best synthesis person, but we'll see if we get it going. All right, so let's. All right, so let's see if we could go in and. Let's see if I could just find the editor. All right, so we want to come over here. Let's just. Okay, so now we could just kind of choose. We go to our modulation matrix. So here at this point, we could choose, okay, I want, the LFO on a modulation matrix, LFO3 going to pitch or going to, different functions right here within. So if you come up to the zone editor, you could kind of come over and see the modulation matrix that you're working with here. So. All right, we see a question from, let me clear my throat, from Jazzy Lamel. Hey Greg, every time I open up a new project or start a mix, I notice that the record button is missing. I don't know why that is happening. How can I stop that? All right, so when we come over here, we can see this little kind of presets here, switch presets. So you're probably maybe in mix. So if you just kind of click right here, you could put it into standard, and then you see the recording. So this way you could have different track control presets. So you can say, okay, I want it very simple. I want to, while I'm mixing, I don't need to hit record and monitor enable on tracks, but when I'm recording or I'm in standard, I'm recording, I may not see like different editing stuff. So just try clicking right here and choosing standard as opposed to, you may be in mixing. And you could always kind of right click on the track area and go to track control settings. And then you could, for audio tracks, you could pick which parameters are visible and which are not visible. All right, reading through comments. All right. See, Mark Rabin says he's been looking at a bag of potato chips across the studio this whole time, and the bag won. So Daniel just says, thank you, Greg, for the simplicity of your answers and the gentle encouragements. It means a lot. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and migrate to some of the questions that were sent in. Let me get to those quickly. If you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. All right, so we had a question, I think it was last Friday's live stream, and I was having a brain cramp about how to recall MixConsole window from the MIDI key or the MIDI remote device. So let me go ahead and show that. So let's go to our MIDI remote. I'll go to my trusty Nano control here. So I want to map a particular function. So say I want to take this button that I'm hitting here, and we'll go to the mapping assistant. So when you go to key commands, it's going to be under devices. And then we could see mixer. So now we could apply that mapping. And that would automatically open up the mixer when we hit the particular button right there. So under devices, mixer. All right, and we also had a question mailed in, it was a project logical editor that I was working on last time that I think I finally got tweaked, of if we have multiple events on a track, how to move each of the events in the same space and create a new track, so that if we have multiple events like this, and if we look at the top track and I arrow over, I want to take each of these events and move them, and the question was how to move these to a new track in the same amount of time. So I think I got the project logical editor figured out for that. I was pretty close, but I won't torture you through 20 minutes of watching me have a brain cramp. All right, so in this, I'm going to, this is one of the included macros. We're going to do pre-process, post-process, and functions in the middle. So we're going to select, and there's a built-in included macro, comes with every version of Cubase, that's duplicates selected tracks without data. And then I'm going to choose to select none of the parts. We're going to navigate up. We're going to locate the next event. So this happens before we then choose to select events beyond cursor, and property is set to the parent object is selected. All right, so and then afterwards we're going to nudge down. We're going to nudge that event to the lower track. We're going to select no events and then nudge down again. So let's see how, if I get this to work as expected. So what this should do is take this event, move it down, take this event, move it down below the tracks. So as we do this, it's going to make a new track, keep the same data in the same amount of time, but each of these events on their own separate track. So again, to start the pre-process, we want to go to macro, duplicate selected tracks without data, and that comes with Cubase as a standard macro. We want to do edit, select none, navigate up, transport, locate the next event. We're going to choose select events beyond cursor where the parent object is selected. We're going to nudge down. So once that's done, we're going to nudge down. We're going to select none and then nudge down again. And at that point, we could take those particular tracks and move them all to new tracks. So again, we'll come here. So that's how you could do it. All right, so next question we had, just undo this. Question, is it possible to delete everything except what is selected? So I mean sort of an inverted selection. What is not selected will be modified. For example, delete MIDI notes in key editor. And then just kind of a follow-up says, Greg's question could be simplified. How to swap selected objects with unselected objects? For example, in a key editor. Okay, so let's say we're in our key editor and we have lots of different notes, and we'll make this a little larger. Okay, so let's say I have a range of notes selected here, and I wanted to basically, take the selected notes and invert the selection, I guess, if you will. So now if we go to your edit menu to select, we could just choose invert. And then the notes that were selected are now selected. So we could just do it like that. So again, if I wanted to now go to edit to select, and it looks like command, or I'm not sure if that's a standard key command. I may have added it, but you can just invert the selection. So this way you can say I wanted to get rid of every note except these notes. So again, edit, select, invert, delete, and then the other notes are gone. Okay, so we had a question. Hi Greg, during playback, is it possible to stop or halt the playhead at the location that it's currently being played, regardless of the settings in transport? So I would like a halt command that trumps the transport entries for playhead. Okay, so let's say I currently have I'll zoom in here. All right, so now when I stop, it doesn't return to the start position. But let's say if I have returned to start position, I'm just hitting the space bar. So I'm going to go to my start mode and say return to start position. So if I start playing right here, and I hit the space bar again, it will go back. So let's say I want it to only stop regardless of what that setting is. So if you have a numeric keypad, which I always recommend that every Cubase user have a numeric keypad on their keyboard. You know, spend the extra $4 if it's, you know, if it costs twice as much to get the numeric keypad, do it. Because what you could do is simply use, I'm going to start playing, and now when I hit the 0 key on the numeric keypad, it looks like it follows. Let me just see. It used to be function independently. All right. I guess that behavior changed in 13. So let me see if we could just program this. Yeah, so there used to be kind of a stop command, and that would function independently of the play mode, but maybe it's changed in 13. So let's see if I turn this off. So now it's going to stop right there. All right, let me try one other thing, see if I play it from, change my start mode. Now, if you hit the enter key on the numeric keypad, that will play. So let's see if I start with that as my play.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like they're kind of tied together currently. In the transport, it used to function independently, like in version 12. So I'll bring that to the attention of the team, but it looks like it's going to be tied to the global settings. It used to be that it was the space bar was start stop. So when I come here, so there used to be like a start stop versus stop. So this is space bar. So I think it's still, I think now maybe it's kind of globally tied. So, but it used to be kind of two separate functions where when you hit the space bar once, it would, when you hit 0 once, it would play back. It would play. It would stop at the position. You hit it twice, it went back to the previous position, to the start point. So I'll see if I could bring that back. I'll mention it to the Steinberg team because I always like that function. All right, and we had a couple of feature requests that were sent in. One is, while the project is loading, it should say the name of the project instead of what is loading. MixConsole is loading, so let's open up a project here. Let me just clear my throat. All right, so let me open up a project that isn't currently active. Okay, so we get to activate the project. So we see it's loading the MixConsole. So I guess the thinking is if you have selected the project, that you know what probably the project name is. So, but you know, I don't think it's kind of the end of the world, but I'll pass it along regardless. And we also have a request for a cancel loading project. So I'll make sure to pass that along as well. All right, let me jump back to our live questions. And again, if you want to send questions in advance, you could send it to clubcubase@steinberg.de. David M. just says the new return to start location makes more sense. Can't believe I missed that. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, sometimes you take something from an obscure location and put it into a more obvious location. The new location is obscured when you're looking in the older spot. All right, we see Mark Rabin's taken off. So Daniel's is asking where I'm going on my vacation. So we're going to Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. So looking forward to it. Never been. All right, Marco Pollux asks, hi Greg and Jazz Dude, quick question. Is there an easy way to move the MIDI remote controllers I already have in one computer to another, or do I need to reconstruct it all again? So really all you have to do is once you go to your MIDI remote, and we'll go to like the script, is just simply come here and you'll see once you click on the settings wheel. So we look at our script, click on the little settings icon, the MIDI remote manager, click on scripts, and just simply click on export script, and then email that to yourself, get that file to your other computer, and then all of the scripts that you've worked on will automatically be translated and carried over to your new system. So once you're in the MIDI remote, select the device, come right over here, go to scripts, and then you could actually just choose to export your different scripts. So you could select the script right here, click export, give it a name, whatever, and then at that point you're just have that file. And then once you have the file in the other system, you go to your scripts and you'll see import script. So that's all you have to do is right there, just click on import script. See, Sable Winter is just saying, enjoy your vacation, Greg. Thank you very much. Glad to see you on, Sable. Glad you can make it today. All right. Reading through comments. All right. See, everyone's happy that Sable is on. So I think I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's any more questions that pop up. Give it, I know sometimes there's a 30-second delay from when I speak to when you guys hear, so we'll just wait a moment, see if there's any other questions pop up. So once again, for people who may have joined late, there will be no live streams next week, just because I'll be on vacation. All right, so we see Keith Young says, hello, Greg, need to brush up on multiple sends. So, you know, so let's take a source here. All right, so I'm going to take, here, we'll just, okay, so let's say I want to use multiple sends on a track here. We will, so let's go ahead and open up our channel. So I'm going to add some different effects. Okay, so let's add a delay, let's add chorusing. Let's add, I think we have a reverb already. Let's add pitch shifter. All right, so we have multiple send effects, and let's say I want to take my vocal here, and we'll start off with no sends. Activate it. Okay, so we'll say our effect is dry. So when I want to send to our effects that we just created, I can say, okay, let's just send it to our octaver.
Something's wrong. We can't go on living a lie.
So now we'll unmute the octaver.
How can I feel you? How
Let's send
can
it
I
to
see you
our
and
delay.
feel? You're running hide from the
I'll just take the octaver off. That sounds silly. All right, so now,
be someone
so we select a track, and we want, again, to come over here.
at the ground, not a sound. Tell me why something's wrong. We can't go on.
And say I want to change my delay time. So the more,
Living a lie.
so at this point, if we want more,
How can I feel you?
we could adjust the amount of the delay. Let's add some chorusing.
You're running hide from the light.
So now we'll just kind of put this on.
Someone tonight. So afraid to smile.
And let's add, we had a reverb that was already in here.
Change my mind. I can't forget when we first met. What a story.
Oh, just-
no rise. How can I feel you? How
So as we want to send to multiple devices, we would just come right over here and use our effect send. And as we move it over to the right, that adds more of the effect or less of the effect. So I could have 8 effect sends here. If I go to a different channel, I could have 8 effect sends. They don't have to be physically the same. So I could have 8 different effects on different channels. It's something you often don't see on traditional analog mix consoles, where once you have an effect send on one track, it's going to send one for all of the tracks. So we could have 8 independent effect sends going on directly here. So. Okay, let me just go through. We had some more comments come in. Okay, so Michael Pierce says, just asking, is next week a no hangout week? So that's correct. So I'll be on vacation. Thanks for the kind words, Daniel and Michael Pierce. Michael Team says he has 312 questions, but can't think of them at the moment. Typical. All right, so we have Club Debris checking in from Brazil. Thanks for being on with us on the live stream tonight. I think it's probably still afternoon where you're at. All right, so we see Jazzy Lamel says, hey, Greg, a client asked if you're available for one-on-one consultations for Cubase through Zoom if needed. So yeah, I often will help people. So they could reach out to me. And they could reach me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so Club to Breathe has a question. In the MixConsole, how to hide all channels tracks without audio or MIDI at one MixConsole window, how to create a key command to keep Insight only active tracks. Cubase Pro 1304, Windows 10. Okay, so let me just open up kind of a larger project. All right, and I'll revert this. I think I previously destroyed the project. All right, now I'll just add a couple of empty tracks. Okay, so we go to our MixConsole. We have a number of empty audio tracks in this particular project. All right, so what we can do is if we go to your configurations here, there are some presets. So we could say we want to show only tracks, show channels for tracks with data. So where you can see configurations up here at the top, we could just say show only tracks with data, and then it will hide the other tracks. So we can see where we have tracks with no data. So, and then we could say let's show all channels. So we could look at the visibility settings right here. So again, show only tracks with data. So if you have empty tracks, they're hidden in your mixer view. And I think that we could do that as a keyboard shortcut as well. So let's go to key command. And I think that there's like a MixConsole configuration. Let me just type in the function. So we say show channels with tracks for data. So it's going to be under channel and track visibility agents. Show channels with only track. So you could assign a keyboard shortcut right there, and that way you don't have to where it's like, wow, I'm not making a big difference with this particular channel, and then you realize that there's no data on that particular track. So again, just come here, show tracks only with data, and we can see that empty tracks are automatically hidden in visibility. All right, reading through comments here. So Graham Witcher is just asking, so no live stream next week. That's correct. And John Koskinen says his mom liked Tilton Head Island a lot, so that's good. It seems like everyone has positive things to say. All right, so John Works asks, hi Greg, is there a way to group the effect sends on a channel to send to multiple effects at the same time? So what you can do is, when we add a group, so let's say we'll just start off here. So let's say we have an audio track here, and let's say I add an effects track. So let's say I want this to be like a reverb and delay and chorusing together, kind of blended. So let's say, okay, we'll do a stereo delay. Hit OK. And on my effects channel track, if I come over here, we can now come over and say, okay, I want the delay to be fed into a reverb that's going into a flanger. And then I want that to be auto panned. So we'll come over here. So now when I send to one particular effects channel from my audio, we come over here to the sends, and we can say, okay, we're going to go to, and we could relabel this like multi effect stack. So now that I do this, we'll come over to our sends for the audio track, and we can see our multi-effect audio stack. So this one track is now being fed to this effects channel, but this effects channel can have up to 16 different plugins loaded at once. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do, or if we wanted to now take, let's say if we add multiple effects channels, we could also take a look at so let's say I have these three, and now I think we could just route these three effects channels to a group channel so that the output of these particular effects, I think that we could just simply, let's just see if we come over here, that if we wanted to So this output is, so we could send it to, it looks like the groups that may create a feedback loop, but you could just, again, take your multiple effects and stack them all right here on one effect send. So let me know if that makes sense or is helpful. All right, you see kind words from Daniel. It just says, I want to hope that when I'm knowledgeable as you in like 30 years, I'll be as humble and willing to invest my time in helping others as much as you do. Your character is truly an inspiration. Well, thank you. That means a lot, and very touched by the comment. But I think after a while, if you have a certain amount of knowledge, it's really almost your duty to share it with others. So I'm glad I have a forum to do that. But thank you for the kind comment. All right, Uno Memento says, Greg, do you have a special guest on Tuesday's Zoom meetup? So unless someone calls me while I'm on vacation for a special favor, I probably won't have anyone lined up for Tuesdays because it's the day after I get back from vacation. But I look forward to kind of catching up with everyone as well. But maybe we'll try to have a special August, maybe hard time with vacations, but maybe September-ish we could plan on having a special guest as well. So maybe we'll try to do it like once every 3 Zoom social meetups. Try to get that schedule set. All right, see if there's any more questions. Looks like maybe we're out of questions again. I'll give it another minute, and we'll see if there's anything that pops up. Okay, so we see from John Works, thanks, Greg. I was trying to have 2 mono sends feeding different mono reverbs, but link only the sends on the channel. All right, so let's give it a quick try. So let's say I'll create a mono reverb. Just get rid of these. Okay, so I'm going to add 2 mono reverbs as an audio track. Sorry, to effects channel. All right, so let's see if we could now link these together. So we might have to just, all right, so let me just, because I think if we do just like a typical, let's look at it in the lower zone mixer here. So I think that we would be using kind of 2 separate, I don't think that there's a way to have these linked. Let's see if I can get my MIDI remote to wake up here. So I think that we kind of shy away from, so I don't think that there's a way to have it linked, but obviously you could kind of take the values from one and apply it to copy and paste the values between the two. So, but you could kind of have that set up pretty easily like that. So that way that one track could go to 2 mono reverbs. So if you adjust one, you may have to just, set this to the same amount, but there's, it's kind of a philosophical thing where, the problems you get into with one knob that's controlling multiple parameters. We used to have stuff like that, and it was kind of a tech support nightmare for people. All right, so Sable Winters asks if I'm going to get some fishing in. So I may try it if my son is up for it. I'm not so good at fishing anymore. I used to do it with my dad as a kid, but I'm not so good with getting the worms on the hooks and bait, and I tend to get the strings, the fishing wire all tangled up. So I'm kind of a fishing disaster. But I recognize the importance of I've done it a bit with my son at our local park, but I would probably have to go somewhere in South Carolina and get a fishing license or something, which could be problematic. So, or more difficult. All right. Okay, so we see Michael Teams is working on new material, so it's great to hear. Hope I could play some bass lines for you. All right, so Bratman Studio just says, I have a Halligan 7.1 making a loop. I would like to make that loop turn to a MIDI track and record that onto my track. It doesn't seem to record how. Okay, so let's take a quick look. Let's do a Halligan 7. Okay, so let's come over here to all right, so let's say we want to set kind of, I'll make a bad loop point here. Okay, so let's come over here and we'll put it on continuous loop. Okay, let me just. All right, so we kind of made our loop. So I'd like to make that loop turn into a MIDI track and record that onto my track. So I'm not sure if you're looking to kind of slice. If you wanted to slice the loop and be able to, so if I come over here, we could slice based on transients. And at that point, so I could drag this. We see the little MIDI icon. We could drag that with all of the different sample slices. So as we come over here, now that it's been sliced, we will come, let's say, to our mapping page, and now so if you go into the sample editing, you could, if you wanted to slice, you'll see slice here, and then to drag that to the sequence, so you could play individual notes. You could just click on. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to accomplish. All right, so wonderful to see Suede TV on. All right, reading through comments. Daniel has just learned about the existence of cold soups. All right, yeah. Michael Pierce always has great soup recipes. But yeah, some gazpacho soup is always great. All right, so I think we might be out of questions. We'll just see if there's any more questions that kind of sneak in. I know some people joined late, but we'll give it another 30 seconds and that will wrap up. Be able to start my vacation 10 minutes earlier, get some other stuff done. So I have to pack, but happy I got my lawn mowed this week. All right. All right, we'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, it's always great. I always feel good when I get the gold trophy from the gold medallion, I guess, or cup. All right. All right, I'll give it another 10 seconds. If no more questions, we'll wrap up. Thanks, everyone, for all the great questions. And if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure that you actually hit the like button. And we will be back 1 week from Tuesday on July 30th. And looking forward to getting back after vacation. I appreciate everyone spending part of your morning, evening, afternoon learning more about Steinberg products, and we'll just seeing some comments come in. So appreciate it, and I feel very fortunate to be part of this community. And we will see everyone back on the 30th. And everyone have a wonderful week. I'll miss spending my Tuesday and Friday afternoons with you guys next week, but also looking forward to some downtime. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you back on July 30th. Goodbye.